Good morning. Today again, I was getting loaded up and ready to start, and here everything was great big. I mean, my head filled the screen, and the only way I could change that, it seems, is to shut it all off, and start over. Anyway, good morning. Today we're going to finish Matthew chapter 8. Then on Monday morning, we'll do chapter 9, tomorrow's and Monday's readings. And it's, doing a New Testament. We don't have near as much to catch up on a Monday as in the Old Testament, where there's a lot of times 2, 3, or 4 chapters a day. And of course, tomorrow morning worship live at 8:30 and 9 o'clock. 8:30. That's what time I'll get there. Live at 9 o'clock from Mabel and Sutton. Welcome to join us that way for worship, and then again I'll have worship at 10:30 at our Savior's in McHenry. Normal Sunday morning. So as we look at these verses today, verse 18 says, "Now when Jesus saw the crowds around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side." And it always seems strange, that all of these people are coming and gathering around and following Jesus, flocking to Jesus, bringing all of those who are ill and needing healing and asking for blessings and all of that. And then Jesus is escaping. He's going to the other side. But there's another place where he says that I must go on about my ministry. I must continue. I can't just stay in one spot, but because other people need to hear the word as well. But as the disciples then are preparing to get the boat ready to go to the other side, it says a scribe comes and says, "I will follow you wherever you may go." And then there's another person that comes too. And the response that Jesus has to these two people, it's just kind of strange. It's baffling to us, because to the first, he says, "Birds of the air have a nest, and foxes have a hole, or foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." Jesus had grown up in Nazareth, and he had a home there. Growing up, as he was doing his ministry these 3 years, his Capernaum was kind of where he was his home base, and he stayed often with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. But it in a way, it always makes me think to the future, that Jesus' home, his permanent home, isn't here on this earth. And is that what Jesus is referring to? I mean, I don't have a definite answer. And then this other person comes and says, "Let me bury my father first, and then I will come follow you." My phone's showing a slow connection, and it's been kind of in and out this morning, so hopefully it continues to be there for us. But he says, "Let me bury my father," and then, and Jesus said, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." It just seems so hard. And especially as I read this morning again, I have a funeral this afternoon, and I can't imagine having the family hear these words of Jesus, let the dead bury the dead, just follow me. One of the reasons we have a funeral, we gather together and worship, is because we've been following Jesus. We know Jesus, and we look for the resurrection in and through Jesus. And again, with this man, was his father nearly dead? Was he dead? Or did he have many years? We don't have a complete story here. We don't have the complete picture, which is so often true in much of what Jesus' preaching is. But the reality is, I think what Jesus is saying is that if you make a decision, if you make a commitment to follow me, that's what your commitment has to be. It's just like, God says, "I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods." That, commandment number 1. And it's hard for us often not to put other things, worldly things, ahead of God. And as much as we love and trust God in all things, it's really difficult, to just follow me and to have that complete trust. So, just a little bit of not complete understanding of what's going on here. And, scholars can debate and debate and debate, but do they come up with a perfect And right answer, I don't know. And then they get in the boat, and his disciples followed him in the boat. And they go out to sea, and in Matthew's gospel, this great storm. Again, I mean, there's others that this great storm arises, and the waves are crashing over the boat, and the disciples are scared. They're bailing water, and what's Jesus doing? Sleeping. In all of this chaos and commotion and everything going on, Jesus is sleeping. His body needs rest. Maybe was he testing the disciple? I doubt it, but he needed rest and recuperation. And that's, sometimes I feel that way. When you've been around a lot of people, it takes energy, a lot of energy that way. And I need then that resting time. So I can understand Jesus here. But the disciples come and wake him, and they say, Master, don't you care? Or Lord, save us, we are perishing. And, his response, oh, you of little faith. And he calms the storm. And the disciples wonder, who is this? What kind of man is this that, he speaks and the wind and the waves obey him? It's just, who could he be other than the Son of God? God himself rules the wind and the waves and the world. And there's a little bit of wind blowing today, a little bit of snow coming down. And, I could go outside and I could yell till my throat was hoarse and I was nothing left. And, the wind wouldn't listen to me. The snow wouldn't stop. The clouds wouldn't go away. But if it was Jesus that came and said that, it would be a different story. But the disciples, have been afraid. And they come to Jesus. And it's a reminder, I think, for us too, a lesson for us that, when we have these storms in our lives and we feel overwhelmed and things are crashing in around us and we don't know where to turn, we don't know where to get strength, we turn to God. We turn to God in prayer. We put our faith that somehow, in all of this confusion, somehow, and everything that's going on, that God is there. And, in the thinking of the devastation of the fires in California and the horrific storms out east and how much needs to be rebuilt that way, east and west. I'm sitting in my shop, I'm doing it the right direction. But, people, how can all of this happen? It isn't God causing it. It isn't God saying this is what's going to happen. Some of it is, it's nature. And, sometimes when the thunderstorms and the hail comes through, we call it acts of God. Well, they're acts of nature. It isn't God doing that. And thankfully, we don't have to worry about the punishment that comes in those kinds of forms. But the reminder for us is that in the midst of all of that chaos, and for this family that I have a funeral for today, it's in the midst of the sorrow, the pain, and all of the hurt that God is there. The final thing in chapter 18 is when they get to the shore on the other side, Matthew's gospel has two men coming who are possessed by demons and just wild, and everybody's afraid of them. And Jesus casts the demons out of them into this herd of swine, and the swine run off into the sea and over the steep bank and perish. And those that were watching the swine, rather than shepherds, the pig herders, go and tell the community of what happened. And they come not understanding, not knowing what's happening, but fearing change, fearing, well, what is this Jesus going to do with me? And they ask Jesus to leave. They ask Jesus to leave. Go back where you came from. We don't want you in our area. And sadly, there are people in today's world that turn their backs on Jesus, that say to Jesus, go away, I don't need you, I know. It's just like a man one time told a fellow pastor of mine when he asked about, should I pray for you? Or should I share a prayer with you before I go? I'm not that sick yet. Don't need God yet. Don't need whatever it is. And so, we see in Jesus the power that he has, the love of God in and through all of everything. And Jesus models for us that it's okay to take time to be alone. It's okay for a little bit of rest and relaxation, maybe not relaxation, but rejuvenation. And to always do good, to think about the others. And so as we think about others today, to pray for those in California, pray for those out east that are still struggling with all of that, and for all people with their struggles.